Friday before General Conference. Should be a lot of fun, and that's going to be at our Lehigh location. Also at that same location on Sunday for General Conference. And we did this for the first time at an April conference, and we had a great turnout. So we're going to do it again, and we're going to do a conference watch together. And we will be at that Lehigh building. And what that means is we'll come together. You guys will get to sit in these soft seats. I know it's not the same as jamming, but we have a really good turnout to watch the first session of conference. And then we're providing a brunch between, and we'll have some board games, and we'll hang out for that little bit. And then we'll watch the second session of conference. This is just on Sunday. And then we'll have a potluck, and last time we had a load of people for the potluck. So it was great, a potluck, and then a mingle and hangout. So, and that will be on October 2nd. Then, and some of this is will be new to my committee, so they're going to be surprised when I say this next thing. But we're going to have a kickoff of the year conference. So we're adding a conference in January, and it will start January 26th to the 29th. And it's from Thursday to Sunday. So put that on your calendar, and we're getting that together. All right, I think that's it for all the announcements. Our opening song is page 335, Brightly Beams. And our opening prayer is by Stan Cross of the American Forest State.
That we have to come together tonight. For those who've organized it and those who will be presenting, we pray that thou will bless us with thy Spirit, help us to better understand the challenges and problems that exist in our world today, and pray that will help us to feel promptings that may help us to know how we can help in any way. We're grateful for thy love and for all the blessings thou givest to us. We pray for these things now humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you for the craft. I forgot to recognize President Longnecker from, what state are you from? American Fork. Okay, they're both from American Fork, so thank you. All right, I'm going to introduce our speaker. Allison M. Smith has had an extensive career in advocacy for children and families. She has undergraduate and graduate degrees in human development and social policy from the University of Utah, where she taught for many years. In addition to her teaching, she developed a life coaching practice and became the statewide coordinator for the Office of Drug Endangered Children for the Nevada Attorney General. Through the course of her work in Nevada, she saw many drug-endangered children who became victims of human trafficking. She was then the education and outreach specialist for the Trafficking in Persons program at the Asian Association of Utah, where she conducts training to educate all organizations, agencies, and communities throughout Utah regarding human trafficking and best practices in supporting survivors of human trafficking. Allison is now the United States Aftercare Specialist for Operation Underground Railroad. Thank you, Allison.
Good morning, brothers and good evening. Wow, it's been already kind of a long day for all of us, and so I'm not sure why I'm thinking I said morning, but it is a privilege to be here. Let me share with you a little update to my bio, and that is that I am now the Director of Education for Operation Underground Railroad, and that responsibility covers the world. And I am privileged today to have one of our team members here, Julie Orrick. Would you please stand, Julie? And she is absolutely our lifesaver. She has been with OUR for many, many years and has done countless things and really carries her stewardship beautifully. So thank you, Julie. And then my sweetheart of 38 years on the stand with me today, Brother Smith, and he's actually been prosecuting human trafficking for about 28 years. And so anyway, we both got our degrees at the U, and we're pretty red folks, but it's okay. We all love each other. We're all saints, right, in the gospel. But anyway, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. My hope and prayer is that we will each have the Spirit with us as we engage in this conversation today. My normal style is to be out and about, and so I may end up going down a little bit with you. I tend to want to connect and really, just make sure we're all on the same page. So I'm going to share a little bit about Operation Underground Railroad, how it got started, and I'm going to then get into just a little bit of information about what is human trafficking, and really give you a clear definition for that. And then we're going to talk about the things that Operation Underground Railroad does in terms of being able to really make a difference in the lives of those who've been exploited, and to really educate the world about what human trafficking is and what can be done. So I'm going to first see. I don't like being stuck, so I'm gonna unstick myself. Okay, so now I need to turn this on. Can you hear me? Okay, that's so much better. Okay, so I want you to just be careful as we talk today. I talk pretty candidly. I respect that, by candidly meaning I just speak about what's going on in this dynamic of human trafficking. But be careful and excuse yourself and take a minute if you need. Sometimes the things that we talk about can be triggering. And so out of much love and respect for each of you, I would just say, take whatever time you need and just be mindful of those triggers as they may happen. Really quickly, our mission is to completely eradicate human trafficking. Now there's a whole lot much longer mission that I could share with you, but in a nutshell, that's really it. We focus a lot on children, of course, right, because they are not able to do for themselves in many cases what those trusted adults in their lives need to do. Let me share with you, speaking of children, how it is that Operation Underground Railroad got started. Can everyone see me and hear me in the way back? Okay, because if I need to get back up on the stand, you just point me back up there, and I'll do that. Okay. So really quickly, Tim Ballard, he worked for Homeland Security. He was an HSI agent and had been for many, many years. He was several years, or just a few years, I should say, close to retirement. And he was sent into South America to do a particular work down there. And while he was there, he discovered that there was a place that had represented itself to be an orphanage, but in fact found out that what they were doing was actually selling children to the highest bidder there. And so he reported that back to his superiors, and they said, stay in your lane. And he said, okay, but I don't think you understand, this is what's happening, and these children are getting sold. And they said, stay in your lane. And so he basically, now I'm completely summarizing, but in a nutshell, he and his wife said, okay, well, we're a few years away from retirement, but it is more important to do the right thing, right? More important to do the right thing, and the Lord will take care of the rest. And so he left HSI and started Operation Underground Railroad. Again, that's a brief summary. I could take a couple hours and tell you the longer version, but it's a beautiful thing, right? Because it was the hard but right thing. And it's just been amazing since then. So just to point that out, our mission is, again, eradicating human trafficking, and especially we focus on children, but then we also assist adults as well, as they are recovered, and we're able to assist them to be able to move forward in their lives. So really quickly, again, as I mentioned, number one is in terms of our mission and our vision to basically affect freedom for survivors and help them move forward with their lives in a way that they feel good about. That is an important piece. Survivors need to be empowered as they move through and beyond that exploitation. Then we also provide a great deal of support for law enforcement, both in the United States and throughout the world. I just was in Thailand about 6 months ago and did a training for all of the security for the Bangkok airport and for AirAsia, which flies throughout Asia. And so, again, the point is it's throughout the world, but it's also here in the United States. And in terms of law enforcement support, we have a K-9 program and all kinds of other additional supports for law enforcement, forensic interview materials, and those kinds of things that allow them to be able to investigate these types of cases. And so, again, that's the second piece. And then finally, the goal is to educate the world about human trafficking so that our eyes are wide open and we do understand the dynamics, what it is, what are some of those things that we might notice, and then what can we do about that, okay? Really quickly, I want to define for you what human trafficking is. And I think that that's important. So we won't get into a scholarly, conversation. I'm just going to quickly share with you what is human trafficking. I refer to this model as the AMP model. Action means purpose. And this is basically the law for Utah. It is also the federal law. Utah law happens to match exactly the federal law, which is called TVPA for short. But bottom line is, it's really simple. 3 pieces. An action that a trafficker would commit, and you can see what those are. What's one you see? What's one you see under action? Kidnap. Okay, good. And did someone say recruitment? Okay, good. One more. Okay, child pornography. Now, under action, we don't see child pornography, but that is, right? We're going to get into that. We're going to get into the details here. Right, so that could be that that person takes a picture of someone, an inappropriate picture of someone, and then they advertise that. And they share that with people. And how, these are things that are hard to talk about. And so those actions, you can see the variety of actions that the trafficker would commit. The M stands for means. The means whereby the trafficking occurs. And so what do you see here? We see force, fraud, or coercion. Force is what? Someone give me an example of force. Kidnapping, good. And what did you say? Yes, physical kidnapping, exactly. And so what I want to tell you is that unlike a lot of this is kind of a myth, I'll just say. It is part of trafficking, no question about it. But only in about 5% of cases is force the means by which the trafficking occurs. So kidnapping is not typical, it is atypical, right? Okay, what's the next one? Fraud. What's fraud? When someone commits fraud, what do?
Lie. Misrepresentation.
Yeah, they lie, they misrepresent themselves, right? Come and try out for this modeling gig that we have. Or come and be in a music video, right? And that's just, I could share so many stories with you. And so again, it is misrepresentation, okay? And that's fraud. Coercion. Coercion is trickier. Tell me what your thoughts are in terms of coercion.
How about exercising control or authority?
Very good, very good. So coercion is where someone looks for a vulnerability in another person. And I'm here to tell you that I want you to think yourselves, you're probably thinking, well, that wouldn't necessarily be me. But what ends up happening is, I want you to think about situations, for example, in your own mind, just take a minute and think, is there one person in your life that you care about? Just one person. What we have is that when someone is pulled in by coercion, that vulnerability for a single mother might be her children that she cares about. That vulnerability might be someone who has a history of child abuse and neglect and doesn't really know who to trust. But you can see, right, these are not, and other vulnerabilities might be a substance use disorder. But it is and can be, it can happen to anyone. My husband had a case where this darling girl was in her last year of nursing school at UNLV. And so what ended up happening is, I can't tell the whole story just because of time, but she got into a relationship with a very nice gentleman, and she thought she could absolutely trust him. And long story short, her children, threat of harm was made against those children, and she knew, because of past history that she learned about later, that he would carry out and was capable of carrying out the harm that he, had indicated he would, commit against those children. And so it then, led to her being coerced into the life. Okay, and she was in the life for 7 years. And I think you worked with her mom, didn't you? Yeah. So, coercion, you can see, force, fraud, or coercion are the means whereby, you have a quick question, yes?
Quick question.
coercion? Excellent question. Coercion is the most common. Okay, great question. And then for the purpose of commercial sex or labor. Okay, labor is cleaning a house, waiting on someone at a restaurant, all kinds of other things that occur here in Utah all the time. Okay? All right, the other piece that I want to make clear is that there is an exception in the case of the means piece, that middle panel you see, the forced fraud or coercion. If we're talking about someone who is under the age of 18, as it relates to commercial sex only, right, there's an exception because they are legally not able to consent. And so there is no means required in the case of a juvenile as it relates to commercial sex only. So simply eliminate that middle panel. Okay. Really quickly, there was some study done a few years ago, actually quite a few years ago. There's another one coming out, which I'm anxious to see what that is. But the study is really about people's perceptions as related to trafficking. And this study basically said, so do you think human trafficking is happening throughout the US? Pretty prevalent. 73% say yes. But when they're asked about their local community, that number goes down to 20%. Brothers and sisters, I am here today to share with you that it is happening everywhere in Utah, in the nicest neighborhoods. I have a dear friend who works for the Saratoga Springs PD, and she's an advocate for the Saratoga Springs PD. And a couple of years ago, I was in Moab speaking, and she came up to me after, actually it's more like 4 years ago, and she came up to me after and she said, I really enjoyed your presentation. It's not happening in Saratoga Springs. And then I said, I am so happy you came up, and here's my card, and once you become aware, please, give me a call. And I didn't, so just, we're all gracious, right? We're all gracious, that's how we are. And so anyway, then about 2 weeks later, she called me and she said, wow, not only is it happening in Saratoga Springs, but it's been happening for 2 years in this particular case that I know of. And it's around the corner from my house in the nicest part of Saratoga Springs. And it's a husband trafficking his wife. So, brothers and sisters, the gospel's true. And I'm so grateful for that knowledge. And let us cleave unto those things strongly that we know to be true. Okay. Really quickly, this is the latest data we have. Data has been very sparse since COVID, as I'm sure you can imagine. But the human trafficking data, what I want you to get from this is that the 2020 figures we have for the end of 2020 is that human trafficking rates went up by 40% throughout the United States and 50% in the state of Utah. And so let's think about why that would be. We're home. We don't have, something just, am I there? Oh, there we go. I'm not going to touch that cord. We're home, and our children are on the internet, or our grandchildren are on the internet. We're on the internet. And so a lot, and then of course jobs are scarce, and people are having a hard time making ends meet. So lots of things that went into that. But there has been a very steep rise in terms of trafficking rates in the last few years. Really quickly, this is, I actually had a different PowerPoint that I was going to present, and as I went through it, there were some technical issues. So I'm going to share with you kind of a long list, which isn't my favorite thing to do. But I want you to get an idea of some of the vulnerabilities that are present in this dynamic. Number one vulnerability throughout the entire world, in every country, is always poverty. Always. Right? If we're living in squalor, we want to believe the beautiful story we're told, that we can fly from Uganda to the UAE and take a job and be able to work and do some labor in, housekeeping and taking care of children for a family in the UAE. And we go there, and we're going to take that money and send it home to Uganda, and it's going to be wonderful. That's going to be enough money to support that family. But this woman finds out when she gets there and her documents are taken that that is not the case, and that she, in fact, had been lied to. That's an international example, right? Many impoverished, beautiful souls here in the United States, same type of thing. Want to be able to believe those things that they're told. Homelessness, you can see a variety of different things. We know that 90% of survivors of exploitation suffer child abuse or neglect. So we want to do our best work in the home, right? Honor our stewardship the best in our homes. And then another piece is that 2/3 of trafficking survivors were in the juvenile justice or foster care program. And so again, that kind of, it helps us kind of get a quick glimpse of what's going on. I want to share with you a little bit about youth. And where are we on time? Okay, we're doing well. Really quickly, youth in the state of Utah and throughout the United States and throughout the world are especially at risk. Why do you think there's a vulnerability there for our youth? What are your thoughts? What's the vulnerability there? Social media, excellent example. What else about that? Yes, please.
Don't get along with their parents.
Yes. Do you know my husband's first victim, and I use that in terms of the legal term victim, was from Ogden, and he was the head of, in fact, he helped write the law to make human trafficking a crime in the state of Nevada, and he was the criminal chief for the Nevada AG at the time. And she put on Facebook, this is years ago, she put on Facebook, my parents, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? That's all that was needed. That is all that was needed. And so pretty soon, there's a bus ticket, and she gets on the bus in Ogden and goes on the bus down to Las Vegas. And so you can see. The thing is, right, when we are juveniles, when we are not yet age 23, 24, technically our frontal lobes are not fully developed. Sometimes I wonder about my frontal lobe. Don't we all wonder about that? Yeah. But honestly, right, so that dynamic, that frontal lobe is not fully developed. They are not able to think logically like typically adults can, or middle 20 individuals can. So that is an important piece. I want to share with you a little bit about the statistics and sort of the number one, maybe we'll look at the number two recruitment methods or methodologies whereby someone's pulled into the life. Okay, the first one is, I think this person's my boyfriend. I think this person's my girlfriend. I think this person's just a good friend. Right? But then they're doing their intel, they're gathering information about those vulnerabilities that then they can apply pressure to and then compel them to come into doing something they would otherwise never do. Number two, this is throughout the United States, this is in Utah. These numbers, US numbers, Utah numbers. Familial. That is family trafficking family. So I'm hoping that you leave enlightened a bit. And yes, it's hard, but I am truly hoping that this has caused you to maybe think a little differently about this subject. And know that family, right? We just think, in fact, when we got the US numbers, this is years ago, so it's been second for probably the last 5 years. And when we got those numbers, those US numbers from Polaris Project, I immediately went to the Utah data. And I was like, okay, it's not gonna be number 2 in Utah. And sure enough, it was, and it has been again, consistently. Okay, I'm gonna these are the obvious pieces, so I'm gonna move past that. I wanna talk about why individuals, you think somebody who is pulled into this life, as soon as they have a chance to get free or to be, in a store on their own or, something like that, that they would run for help. My husband coined a phrase called invisible chains many years ago. That kind of dates him a little bit too. But it is the concept that while someone is engaged in this dynamic and pulled in, think about what pulled them in. If coercion is the primary methodology whereby someone is pulled in, that hanging there is still there, right? Then there's another piece that happens, and it's called trauma-coerced attachment. What that is akin to Stockholm Syndrome, which I'm sure you all know. This is next level. This is Stockholm Syndrome on steroids. It's a little thing, right? Just to try to describe it. What ends up happening is our brain, when we experience trauma, and I can tell you that the life of someone who's being exploited is incredibly traumatic. Not to mention the fact that they are being assaulted, day after day. And so they're traumatized, and the brain, in order to survive, what's the number one goal of the brain? Survival, right? In order for a person to survive the experiences that they are having, the brain needs to adapt. And the brain adapts by altering the perception of the individual. It's a neurobiological coping mechanism. Okay? And so what ends up happening is the brain attempts to increase the person's perception of safety while decreasing their perception of pain. And that allows them to cope and deal with what they're experiencing. Does that make sense to everybody? So that is why what ends up happening then is that person begins to attach to the person that is the source of the trauma. Okay? And it doesn't intuitively make sense, does it? But it is in fact, we have cross sections of the brain over time, and we can see the neurobiology. And so, yeah, it's definitely look up trauma-coerced attachment. It's fascinating. But it's also tragic, right? Because that person, as much as they are in a great deal of pain, it isn't quite to the extent that they are in fact experiencing it, right? So they begin to attach to that person who is the source of the trauma. And so sadly, they tend to, and I'll share this with you real quickly, they have positive feelings toward the abuser. They love them, and they know that that abuser loves them. Okay, that's their perception. I remember Russell was doing a case, I can't remember, again, I think that this was in Vegas when we were there, and he was doing a case, and this darling girl said to him, actually, I should say darling woman, she was probably, how old would you say she was, 30s? Yeah. And so, anyway, she said to him, they were getting ready to go to trial on the case, and the trafficker was in jail, and she was there and preparing, Russell was preparing her to go to trial, and so forth, and she said, I know it sounds crazy, but I still have moments when I think I love him. And again, that's the brain adapting, right? That allows for that attachment to occur. And so, again, just that point there. They will lie and say, no, this is my boyfriend. They may actually think it's the boyfriend, but they'll lie for them, they'll cover for them, all of those types of things. And so, important to kind of point that out. this is heavy stuff, and I hope that we recognize that there is light in the darkness, right? And it's our opportunity for each one of us to bring light in the darkness in this world in a variety of places, right? As members of the gospel of Jesus Christ, we have the opportunity to bring light into the darkness. And what a privilege that is. What a privilege that is. And so, brothers and sisters, you are the hope. You really are. And just the fact that you're here tonight, that, we can talk about this. I'm so grateful. I want to share with you a little bit about what Operation Underground Railroad does. There is a whole aftercare program, and we have directors for every single country, well, actually every single part of the world. And so there's 2 co-directors over Asia, for example. We have a director over the United States and Canada. And what we do is we provide all of the things you see here and way more for survivors. And we are so grateful to be in this. Again, the process is led by the survivor, right? With counseling, in the process of counseling with the aftercare coordinators and the people that are assisting them. And we meet them where they are. Some people aren't even able to get on a bus by themselves. So what does that aftercare coordinator do? They get on the bus and they sit next to that survivor. The survivor gets to pick where the coordinator sits. So of course, typically they're sitting right next to the survivor. And a few stops away, then that survivor says, okay, I'm ready for you to scoot, here or there. And the idea, though, is if that individual has been so attached to that trafficker and is so fearful of being alone, right, we start small. We start in ways that, again, are person-centered. We meet people where they are. And that includes things like education. That includes things like other types of training that they want to do. That includes a lot of therapy. That includes pretty much you name it, we are there for it. And we are grateful to have the opportunity that we do to truly engage survivors where they are and love them no matter what. Absolutely no matter what. We had the privilege to attend a graduation this last Friday for a beautiful woman who graduated from the Sheriff's Academy. And she was there, her son, she's a single mom, and her son put her badge on her when the graduation happened, and they allowed him to come up and do that. And I tell you, what an example of just hanging in there and trusting and moving forward, and it was a privilege for us to be able to help her. Really quickly, I don't know why this isn't really liking. See if it'll manually go. I don't know what's going on with that slide. Okay. Well, there we go. Okay. Just want to share with you an example of some things. This was over at the Shields, Shields in Sandy. So this was at the Shields in Sandy. This is an emotional support dog we provided for this particular survivor. You'll notice we don't show any part of her that's identifiable out of respect for her. But yes, this is an emotional support dog, and they are absolutely tied at the hip, and it's beautiful, and it's an essential piece for some. Another example is, this is Shannon, also Mukisa. She was the very first survivor that Operation Underground Railroad repatriated from the United Arab Emirates back to her home country in Uganda. And she had gone there, as I mentioned before in that quick example, she had gone there to be able to have a good job and provide funds for her family, because in Uganda there's not a lot of work. And her mother took care of her son, and she was going to send money back. And of course, it was not what it was made out to be. And the Operation Underground Railroad paid She basically escaped from the home that she was in, or from the brothel she was in. And then when the law enforcement tracked her down, or came across her, she didn't, of course, have her documents. Why? Right, the traffickers kept the documents. That's one of the big ways. That's huge leverage for them. And so she didn't have her documents. So what did they do? They put her in jail. There she stayed for 6 years. Oh. And when Operation Underground Railroad found out about that, we immediately paid her fines and we flew her back to Uganda. And now she's has her own business and she's building a house out of brick by brick, and she's just amazing, amazing. So it is our privilege to be able to do this great work, and I tell you, I'm just so grateful, so grateful. What can you do if you suspect trafficking? If we had more time, we could really get into the details of that. What I will say is if it's someone who is a juvenile, you not only want to contact the local Child Protective Services agency, but also law enforcement, both. Not one or the other, but both, okay? The other thing is that, yes, please, question.
So I'm a teacher and I had a workshop similar to this, and they told me not to call the principal at all, just to call these agencies myself. And I thought that was great advice because I've done things where the principal did nothing before. So don't count on someone above you to do it. Just do it.
Yes, and actually, according to the law, a mandatory report does not include any type of superior like a principal. So a mandatory report, which everyone in the state of Utah is a mandatory reporter. A mandatory report is either CPS or law enforcement, but I say call both. Okay, and that gives accountability, right, to one to the other. Oh, question? Phone number 4. Oh, so that number, I'm just going to get onto that. So that is the human trafficking hotline. And it's, think of 888 on either side of the number and 3737 in the middle. 888, 3737, 888. And that is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. I would do that as well. Okay? Okay. So again, gosh, I wish we could spend more time together. And I will get to your question. I just want to, brothers and sisters, each of us, we have that stewardship, don't we? And I am so grateful that we have the opportunity to engage together today. I am delighted to ask any question or answer any questions. And I'll conclude after we're done with questions. Yes, please.
I was going to say, what are some signs that we can watch for?
Okay. And I actually had a slide on that, but I'll just tell them to you off the top of my head. Okay, there are so many. But let me just give you a few. Number 1. Oh, yes. Repeating the question now, and that is, what are the signs, some signs that you all might want to look for? First of all, I'll tell you, I work with the FBI, and what they are seeing right now is a massive increase in online recruitment, okay? And it's called grooming, okay? And so what I would say is we are seeing children, like age 7, like children, being recruited, and they're being recruited through the chat feature of a video game. Okay, and so the chat thing is, well, I'm going to play my friend down the street, and so we're going to chat while we play the game, but you can chat with other people and you can play other people. And so what's ending up happening is that these children are they're being asked to take pictures, they're being, just all the things. Don't need to go into all the detail, but you understand what I'm saying. And so that is huge, okay? Be aware and be mindful of your children, your grandchildren. talk to people about what is going on. You can go to our website and find out so much information, which is great. And if you have any questions, I'm going to give you my email address and you can email me about anything. And I tell you, that the night doesn't end if I don't answer all the emails. Yes?
At what age are children to a point where they have some form of internal protection so that they can access technology? I personally don't think that a child should have a phone until 18.
Yeah.
But
What do you mean by internal protection? What do you
So
mean by
that
that?
they have
Because there are
developed-
lots of adults that are recruited into the life too.
Like, they have developed enough awareness to catch it.
The only
Is there
thing I can
age?
tell you, it's because I'm a psychologist, it depends on the person, right? Some children are incredibly aware because they've had a really rough growing up, and they're incredibly aware. Does that make sense? Others maybe aren't so aware, and they've had a pretty sheltered life, which is beautiful, which is wonderful. I'm not saying that's not great, but they are much less aware, I'll just say. And so again, it's huge. Online recruitment is the #1 form of recruitment now, right now. Yes. Oh, thank you. Oh, please, yes.
I'm running for mayor for Piña, Utah, 2021. I see some people working for the government.
That's not gonna do. Okay. So she ran for mayor in 2021.
Piña, Utah.
In where?
Piña, Utah.
Vineyard, Utah.
And I see in my campaign men coming to me and talking about protection of the child or something like that.
Okay, and they were talking about protecting children.
But I talked to this gentleman. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, because sometimes not alive for abusing a mother. Sometimes it's abusing your kids, it's teaching all the time, it's the fault of the father. But
So really quickly, she's just saying that they're talking generally about protecting children. Sometimes it's an issue with a mother or a father.
But it's not a fault all the time to the father. In my experience, when I'm working for CNA in the hospital, I see many cases to the, it's confidential, but I see a couple cases that people call for protect the child and send it to different locations, abuse the child, kill the child. It's something more terrible. It's not only the fault to the government it brought us to the family.
So I think she's also saying, and let me clarify if I'm not right, that it is not only the responsibility of the parents, but also the government to, be sure that children are taken care of and protected. Is that accurate?
Because sometimes send them to different locations
Right.
and abuse and kill the child. And it's foster care. Sometimes,
So,
yeah.
so the dynamic is that, anything can happen to a child, whether it's abuse or death or other things. But yes, please.
How do we donate to Underground Railroad?
Thank you. Operation Underground Railroad, you can do that by going to OURrescue.org. And so, not to my email, but the OUR Rescue is up there, .org. And one thing I do want to say, this is, it's really important to me when we were talking about providing education for survivors and providing all kinds of things that they need, housing, and all those things that they're in need of. We typically run about 17% of our donations go to overhead. But we started an OUR store, and here's why we started it. The goal of this OUR store, so some people wear, OUR t-shirt or different things, right? It's done incredibly well. The goal of the store is so that 100% of our donations go directly to survivors rather than the 17% going to overhead. So that, I hope, really tells you how sacred we know those funds are. And, oh, yes, a comment, please. So does that answer? OURrescue.org. Thank you so much. Yes. Just go ahead. Yes.
I was here just a little late. Did you touch on old school slavery being a historic form of this?
Yes. We did not get into a lot of detail there just because of time, but absolutely, I mean, this is modern day slavery, and it started a long time ago, and it takes a different form now, right, in terms of how it's occurring and to whom. But yes, very good point. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, just one thing, I don't know if you commented, but that there's more slaves today than there were back during the
Yes.
Civil War.
Yes.
And the other thing, when you gave the statistic that in Utah, it's gone up 50%, is that because of the kids being on the tablets, or is it because of more immigrants? And is more immigrants even the issue?
Yes, and actually in Utah during COVID, it was not an immigrant issue. It was that people were out of work. They were on the internet way more often, and a lot of children. Can you hear me still? A lot of children as well. So it went up for adults and for children. And again, it was a lack of financial means to be able to do those things they needed to during COVID. A lot of people were out of work and things. And of course, as well, online more. And so lots of recruitment happened there. Yes. Yes, sir.
Are schools very active in helping with
I am so delighted that you asked that question. That brings me to an amazing program we are in the process of launching called Speak Up. It is a anti-human trafficking program, K through 12, and our goal is to get it into every classroom worldwide. And we have partnered with an amazing organization that came to us. I don't know if anyone knows Elizabeth Fisher Good, but a great organization. And so, anyway, long story short, we are in the process of getting it into every school, but that's a long process because every state has different criteria. So, for example, in Utah, we need to get authorization through the Utah State Board of Education. And we're going through that process. I keep moving this, and can you hear me again? I need to quit holding it. Okay. Yes, sir, question.
So if a person here, right now, tonight,
Mm-hmm.
is being coerced or under this kind of thing,
Yes.
and how do they break out of it?
How do they get out of it? So I'm going to say, first of all, the very first step is to reach out, right? Because none of us know about that unless they, make that known. We do find out about individuals that are in the life of trafficking in other ways, but typically it is going to take someone reaching out and saying, I need some help. But again, it's complicated by that trauma-coerced attachment. But that is exactly how, and I have people reaching out to me all the time, and we put things in place and we get it done. Yes?
So, I'm a student at Utah University finishing a degree in IT.
Okay, he's at UVU finishing a degree in IT.
So, one of the things that we go over is cybersecurity, and cybersecurity is a big thing.
Cybersecurity is the issue.
So, to somebody in cybersecurity, how can we, as IT specialists, help put an end to this?
Okay, so there is so much technology out there right now. Yes, and I would say look and do a little bit of due diligence in the places where you search for IT programs. There are several in place right now, and we are actually having meetings this week to be able to choose between a few of them and be able to operationalize those to become more active. And so, again, there's an organization called Internet Crimes Against Children. It's called ICAC, and they are surfing the web. FBI individuals are surfing the web. All kinds of law enforcement surfing the web, looking for people that have bad intentions. And then, lo and behold, they show up at their home with a canine that can smell the glue in that USB drive. Yes. And we have provided those canines throughout the United States.
And that's called Internet what?
Internet Crimes Against Children, ICAC. Great questions. Yes, okay, 2 minutes. I just want to conclude. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for caring. Thank you so much for all the good you do in the world. And I'll tell you, the kind of parent and grandparent you are, that has insulating effects for children. Does that make sense? That has insulating effects for children. The kind of parent, the kind of grandparent. Traffickers will sit and listen to a child talk for 3 hours at a time and just listen. Because what do children want? They want to be heard and understood. And they will simply listen until that kid's just done talking. How many parents and grandparents have 3 hours to sit and listen to their children and grandchildren all the day long, right? Or 3 hours long. So point being, we want to be there the best that we can for our children and for our grandchildren, for our neighbors, for the kids in the neighborhood, whomever. To truly be there for them, that has an insulating factor. So I want to thank you so much. Please, no applause necessary at the end here. We're in the chapel, but I just want to thank you so much for your time, for your care, and for your love. And of course, donations are great, but that is not why I'm here. That is not why I'm here. I'm here because it really matters in the lives of these children and in the lives of those who are being exploited in this world. And I'm grateful for you. I know that this gospel is true. I know that our Savior loves us all equally. And I'm thankful for your time tonight. And I say this in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Allison. And I know that some of this stuff is really hard, and it's mind-boggling that it happens. And I live in Saratoga Springs. I wasn't wanting to hear that, but I know that it is, and I know that this stuff is hard. And I'm hoping that the more we educate just a little bit, that we can help protect our brothers and sisters, our adult children, and our grandchildren, and just to be aware. So thank you for that. Our closing song is 221, Dear to the Heart of the Shepherd. Our closing prayer will be by Kay Edmondson. She's the Hillcrest State American Work.
Dear to the heart of the shepherd. we're so grateful to receive the light and knowledge that we have received tonight so that we can be empowered to help and to be protected. We pray that we will stay close to thy Spirit and be able to follow it and have the courage always to do that and to be close to thee. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I forgot to announce, anyone new, if you'll meet us over here, Michael and I, thanks.